Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch and see what comes flying out of my face as I watch and then pause and then talk.
What changed after the pod sin?
I understand that you tried to present yourself and look as best you could. But I feel like if you would have presented yourself like this, without any makeup, it would have been better.
What? 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 Well, I must be misunderstanding what he's saying. The initial impression of what he's saying is that, I mean, like this. Yeah, the eyelashes thing. Is it the eyelashes? So anyway, and then he talked about he liked her freckles. So, yeah. We've heard a number of things. There's a number of breadcrumbs here that all lead to this. Okay, so this is actually in that unknown camp of problems that I was wondering if he had. I was wondering if I've heard, or I don't know. It's not a psychic thing. It just, what was I basing it on? Probably I was basing it on, well, I don't know. To be frank, I was basing it on some of the things that he was wearing, but that's unfair. But maybe not. Anyway, I had this worry that he might have, because of course a lot of the folks on the show, they don't just spring out of nowhere, or they're not necessarily plucked from mainstream culture. And what is mainstream really? You grab a random sampling of Americans and you're going to get some people that are in some very interesting subcultures, right? And some very weird echo chambers. And so I saw some signs of that, and I didn't know, and I wasn't going to assume, but I think I heard some things from him as well. I can't remember what I heard. But anyway, I remember saying to y'all, I think that I was just like, I wonder if there's something else, going on with him. I remember mentioning conspiracy theories or something. Anyway, and I still don't know if this is true, but this might kind of be in that camp. I don't know. It could just be a particular to him, this weird preference. Look, I even talked about when we originally were talking about the eyelashes, I said that I'm not a fan of that kind of thing. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't see the whole eyelash culture until, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And by then, I'm in my 30s and I have my expectations. I would never judge anybody else for doing what they want to do. But in terms of what I would like to see with myself and the people around me, as a preference. I'm sure I would adjust over time. If my wife, for example, wanted to wear giant eyelashes, I at first would probably just be like, but then over time I'd be like, okay, you just get used to things. So there's nothing wrong with having a preference, is the point. But he must be grasping at straws. He, given my hypothesis, I think he is so insecure and so terrified and so panicked that all he can manage to get out are these statements of like, it's because it's awkward, because you never got over it. You're just focusing on the awkwardness too much. And she is escalating and saying, you're awkward now, and he's caught. He doesn't know what to say, and so he's just grabbing for something. I hope that's what this is. There's another possibility that he's in some sort of weird echo chamber about, is this an incel thing? Anti-makeup? Let me look it up. Okay, so I'm reading The New Yorker, which I think is a respectable publication. So by the way, this is an article called The Rage of Incels. But incels, being violent misogynists, often express extreme disgust at the idea of whores. Incels tend to direct hatred at things they think they desire. They are obsessed with female beauty, but despise makeup as a form of fraud. Yeah, I'm grasping at straws. I'm trying to figure out why the hell he would be saying this right now. And to my eyes, and I'm in my cultural pocket, I don't see much of a difference between her with whatever's happened. I don't know if she has makeup on now or not, but maybe it's either no or little makeup. I don't see that much of a difference between her here and in the hallway, but everyone comes from a different place with that. But I'm just trying to think why you would say this right now. I still think there's a possibility he's just grasping at straws, but why that straw, right? But it does lend itself to that echo chamber hypothesis that he has been convinced. I mean, he's certainly, I don't know. So, well, let me talk about incels. I spent a lot of time in the beginning of this podcast and YouTube channel actually fielding a lot of questions about red pill, MGTOW, incels, pickup artists, folks. And I have some expertise in it. One, because I'm a man and have been indoctrinated into the toxic masculine ideals thereof, and maybe even more so than other people that are younger, because in the 70s and 80s, toxic masculinity was even worse. But so I have that experience to draw upon and my own emergence from that gender trauma and adherence to positive masculinity. I absolutely identify as masculine and value my masculinity and am totally okay with my masculinity as I'd chosen to identify with it. So I'm not saying I have rejected masculinity. I'm not above gender. I am of gender because of the way that I've been socialized. I can't get out of it. Anyway, my point is that I have that to draw upon, that exploration and that therapy and that healing and that academic literature review that I spent a lot of time reading a lot of literature and also hearing from a lot of people. But another detail is that I've had a number of clients that were pre-incels. Incels is a thing that happened later on. The clients that I'm referring to in the past, they were in the pickup artist community. That was a very large organization that, in my estimation, was bigger than incels back in the day. Anyway, so I had a lot of time with those guys where we would debate, and they would be in those communities. They would go to the classes and they would be online and they would tell me what they were learning and what beliefs they had. And so I would have to interface with these folks and value what I could value and dismantle what needed to be dismantled for their own sake. I won't go into details because I don't have time to, but there were a lot of things to sift through. There were a lot of ideas that they were being told that kind of makes sense if you look at the world in a certain way. The basic things that incels will echo chamber to each other, it sounds absurd, but when you live in that world and you hear the rhetoric and you hear the way that they frame things, you're just like, oh, okay. Especially if you're unaware and especially if you're struggling. And that leads me to the point that I want to make is that for these folks that I was treating, and subsequently for a lot of the folks that would email in, men that would email in saying, I'm an incel, or I'm a MGTOW, or I'm a red pill, or I feel like I'm going in that direction. What should I do? These folks are struggling. They might not look like they're struggling. They might look like they have a good life and they're confident and whatnot. But deep down, they are deeply, deeply struggling, these individuals, with rejection, with demoralization, maybe depression, anxiety, all number of things that can lead to an individual feeling demoralized about their prospects as a husband, as a partner, as a person in society. They feel like they don't matter. They feel like no one will ever love them. They're very, very hurt about having been rejected in the past. They worry about finances, because of toxic masculine ideals about how men are supposed to provide and they're supposed to always pay for everything. And, career-wise, for a lot of people, sometimes it's hard to get your career off the ground. Sometimes you don't have the privilege to be connected to certain people when you're growing up. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the outside. And, we are pretty good right now in our mainstream liberal culture about dismantling sexism and misogyny in a lot of ways. But we have yet to really address in a very overt and vocal way the oppression that is on men regarding things like this, like saying that men need to earn more and they're a beta if they're not earning more than their woman, or they need to always pay for everything. There's a lot of backwardness in our society among people that are very forward in a lot of ways, a lot of progressive people that are still backward in a lot of ways. And of course, that doesn't even discuss, we're not even getting into like non-liberal, non-progressive societies in the United States and also around the world. But the point is that you have a lot of guys that things didn't work out for them career-wise or whatever, and it's hard. And they feel like because they already feel like they don't matter. They already feel like no one's ever going to love them. They feel ugly or stupid, or they don't feel alpha enough. They're looking at these guys on Instagram. They're like, oh, if I could only have abs like that guy, then, or if I could have that Maserati, then one day. And they see all the pictures, and they don't know, because they don't know that those pictures are stupid, and that's just a model that they're paying, and it's an empty life. The Andrew Tates. Think about all that stuff, right? So these guys are suffering. It doesn't justify the bullshittery that comes out of the incels and the red pill people, but I do have tremendous sympathy for what they're going through, because we pump all these ideas into their heads as they're growing up, and then they're like, okay, so the masculine ideal is this. I follow the plan. I've seen all the movies. I just have to follow the script, and everything will work out for me. And then things don't work out for them, and then they're also being told that they can't be who they have been socialized to be. They're criticized for having misogynistic ideas or sexist ideas, the way that they talk, sexually objectifying women. They were taught that was actually what you're supposed to do. They were taught that was not only your right, but your duty as a red-blooded American man, boy. That's how you assert yourself. Isn't that what women want? And that is often taught to boys. And so they will, feel this internal pressure to do those things and to get the rewards from society like they were told they were going to. And then they get all these people like myself saying, you are a misogynistic asshole, stop being sexually objectifying of women. And they don't know where to turn. And there's a lot of directions that they'll turn, but one of the directions that they'll turn is to incels and Andrew Tate and the MGTOWs and the red pill and the pickup artist community and those folks. And when they arrive to the shores of Incel Island, Andrew Tate Island, there is a warm welcome of all these other guys that say, come to us, I understand you. And they share a lot of the same emotions. I know you're hurting. They might not use that language, but that message is there. And then they say, and we have an answer for you. Here's the answer. You got to be alpha. You have to assert your dominance. You have to break women down. You have to treat them like garbage because that's what they really want. You have to not care about your emotions. You have to focus on, crypto, and I'm going to sell you this product, and da-da-da-da. And so for these folks, they're lost. They don't know where else to turn, and especially if they're right-wing or fundamentalist Christian, or they live in a red state or a red zone of the United States, then they have been also pumped full of all this propaganda that liberal progressives like myself are evil and horrible. I don't know what adjectives they would say about me. I certainly have heard them, that I'm a cuck, or that I am a mangina. I would hear that back in the day. I haven't heard that in a while. What other words? I'm a pinko. I'm a communist. I'm a threat. I'm trying to make men women, probably. It's not. I'm trying to make women. I'm trying to make men. What did I say? I'm trying to make men women. I'm trying to make men gay. I'm trying to take away people's civil liberty. I guess all those things. So, you've been propagated to, you've been, propagandized. And the only people that can help you are people from my side of things, and particularly men on my side, who can lead the way. And they just will immediately label me as the enemy, and they're lost. We could imagine that JP could be in that camp. I don't know. It's not a strong hypothesis. The hypothesis that I have about his scheme is there's a lot of data pointing in that direction. This one, I don't know. But I'm just trying to figure out why in the hell he would bring this up.
Look as best you could, but I feel like if you would have presented yourself like this, without any makeup, it would have been better.
So he's claiming that if she didn't have makeup on it wouldn't have been awkward. Yeah, that's, I mean, if so, my goodness.
So the way I looked made you communicate differently.
Okay, so it's good. In her head, she's like, what the fuck? But outwardly, she is like, wait a second. So I'm going to clarify. So the way I looked made you communicate differently. That's a good question. And he's rolling his eyes or something. So I don't know what, she's just asking a question. That's what you said, pal.
It felt like you were fake.
So that's why the communication has been off and different.
That's what
Because I
started it all.
felt fake.
Yeah, okay. So she's saying fake. So getting to the article, the New Yorker, right? That's what I think what they're talking about is that there's a possibility that in the incel community or red pill or manosphere, that there's a lot of propaganda around makeup and about how that's how they get you, and they wear the outfits that accentuate. They're trying to manipulate you, and who knows if he also comes from a church that might have these ideas. That's not uncommon, but because, like I've been saying, there's nothing wrong with having a preference, and there's nothing even wrong with him going like, "Wow, she's got a lot of makeup on," or "I wonder if she's trying to hide something." You can have a preference about that. You could have a reaction to that, I suppose. But the conclusions is, I think that points to propaganda and brainwashing and associations and a whole set of odd beliefs that are, and this is potentially the tip of the iceberg in terms of the weirdness that could be going on inside of his head. So wearing makeup, it's all fake. And so according to him, I think what he's saying is, so I had a vision of you in my head that I fell in love with at the pods, and I saw you, and all I saw, this is his words, his thoughts, I guess, was a lot of makeup, and I saw fake, and therefore what? I decided to become awkward, or I didn't know what to do. Like, what is he saying? That he decided he was unsure about her, that he, based on her makeup, decided that, wow. And I pray to God that for Taylor, she doesn't take this to heart. I hope she doesn't. I hope it is so absurd. I always like that. I like it. If someone attacks me, I like it when they're so absurd that I'm like, oh, you're just absurd. I'm sorry that you're absurd. It's when it's like in the realm of possibility or believability, or it has some integrity or some basis. That's when it will get under my skin.
So that's why the communication has been off and different.
That's what
Because I
started it all.
felt fake. Interesting.
I mean, I suppose there's a possibility that when he saw her, he was just like, wow, you're just so not my type. I usually go for a granola person. I mean, I'm just trying to think what we would hear if we could actually get him to express himself. That wouldn't justify any of this, of course, but I don't know. I'm just wondering.
And different.
That's what
Because I
started it all.
felt fake. Interesting.
Okay, so no follow-up from him. He's just saying, yep, that's what it was. You had makeup on, so that's what started it all. That's why we are here. If he said something like, that happened, and then I was awkward because of that, and then we separated, and then we met up, and you thought that I was hurtful to you, and then I was bothered by that, and then that led to this and that, But the way he's framing it, it's like, yep, you wore makeup, and so our relationship sucks now.
You had caked up face, fake eyelashes.
What the fuck? Okay, caked up face. I mean, you don't get that phrase just from yourself. That probably. Let's look at the tape. Let's go back.
How are you feeling?
I'm excited.
Want to sit?
Yeah.
My heart is like still pounding out of my chest. Feel it. Feel my heart. Can you feel it?
Yeah.
This is so exciting.
Okay, this is actually less awkward than I remember it being. In my head, he didn't say anything, but he starts out, okay, yeah, so where's the threshold for caked on face? I suppose it's in the eye of the beholder, but I'm going to take a guess and say that the vast majority of people in Houston, including men, would think that her makeup was completely within the normal range of, especially given the scenario, it's common for people when it's a fancy affair like this. The way that they treat this hallway thing, it's like they always dress up. There's a very fancy dress that everyone dresses, the suit, all that kind of. This might be the first time we've seen him without an American flag, although he probably has it somewhere on his body, maybe the underwear or the socks he has. But anyway, so we would say that her makeup. Now, he can have his preferences. That is okay. Lots of people would be like, I don't like makeup, but that's my thing. You can have your thing. But to claim that because she is acting like a regular woman in Houston, I don't know about Houston, but, mainstream American woman, stay away from me. The song. Anyway, so shout out to Canada. Anyway, so for that's what you do. Shout out to Canada. That's what they do. That's what we do in Seattle. For him, you can have that preference, but so according to him, because she has that amount of makeup on, that caused him to be awkward, and then everything became bad because of her caked on face. Yikes.
No, we made it.
I know, we did it. My sugar butt.
My sugar.
I'm reminded of their chemistry that they had. Remember that whole sugar thing? That's right. Yeah. Oh, it's so tragic. I feel bad for both of them. I feel bad particularly for Taylor. She did everything right, and here she is.
He had caked up face, fake eyelashes. I'm being honest, and I'm sorry that's so hard to hear. And
You didn't know what I looked like before.
You presented fake stuff.
I just dressed up and put on makeup.
Yeah. Taylor seems like she's got a good head on her shoulders. She's seen through the bullshit. She's like, I just dressed up and put on makeup. What are you talking about? Yeah. The more he talks, it looks like some sort of echo chamber brainwashing has occurred to him. We could speculate as to what that is, and it wouldn't be hard to speculate, but it just has that assuredness and weirdness to it, right? It also is possible he's just weird, meaning that there's not a satisfying conceptualization for his weirdness. Maybe his parents were strange. So there's a way that we talk in our field about some folks that we don't normally talk about on this channel that has to do with thought disorders and, odd ways of thinking. Sometimes we're getting into schizophrenia spectrum or schizotypal personality disorder, or we're talking about maybe potentially neurodiversity. But point is that for some folks, they have a very interesting and odd way of looking at the world and processing things. And when you interact with them, they can feel very eccentric. They can feel very strange. And there's many different diagnoses that we can get into, but also just for some folks, we find that no diagnosis really applies. It's just the way that they are. So, I'll add that to the mix of hypotheses. All right, well, that does it for that episode. I want to remind everyone to please take care of yourself, really. Check in with yourself, know yourself, ask yourself, what do I want? How do I feel? What am I doing? What's going on in my mind? You deserve to take a break every now and then. Stop and smell the roses and stop and smell your own mind, because you deserve it. You really, really do.